All right, we'll start the meeting, and we'll start with public comment. I believe we had someone signed up for public comment, and then they subsequently withdrew their desire to speak. Is there anybody desiring to address the Commission on Sentencing? Nope. All right. Then that being the case, I do want to just take a minute here at the beginning of the meeting and just recognize Acting Department of Corrections Secretary George Little, who is here with us. I know we had some comments with him during the or from him during the policy committee meeting, but wanted to recognize his presence here. We really appreciate you joining us, and offer you an opportunity to offer any comments or remarks if you'd like while you're here.
Well, it's an honor and a privilege to be here with the commission. I look forward to continuing the work of the commission and the work that's been done by the department and in conjunction. Looking forward to upcoming meetings and advancing the work. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah, we've had a great partnership with the department, and look forward to continuing that relationship moving forward. Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 9th quarterly meeting. I know those were emailed to all the members. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
I think that was Judge Tucker and Dally. Judges Tucker and Dally. So it's moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the September 9th quarterly meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the executive, administrative, and financial section. Executive Director Bergstrom.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. As far as commission members and appointments, we received notice of reappointment of Judge Bernstein, reappointment of Attorney Marsico, and reappointment of Senator Street. There's a few outstanding appointments, but members continue to serve until replaced. So I did send notices to those appointing authorities, and we hope to have fresh appointments in the near future. So thank you all. Appreciate your efforts in helping to bring those appointments about. The chairman already introduced our new member, our ex officio member, Acting DOC Secretary George Little. So really happy to have the secretary on board. We usually provide at this point an opportunity for any kind of updates on activities by the department or by the board. So I'll defer again to the secretary if there's any kind of comments he wanted to make about any activities at the department.
Well, just by way of a very quick update, obviously leadership changes at the top. And we're going to continue forward, and I've shared both internally and externally. We're going to build on the work that Secretary Wetzel did as capably as we can. Don's our big shoes to fill. I mean that figuratively and literally. But seriously, it's been a great time for me being in the department. So it's been a very smooth transition. We're still grappling with COVID. Just when we thought it was safe to come out again, we're having to readjust, but we've got a 91% vaccination rate with the inmate population, which speaks volumes of the work that's been done to date. So thus far, we are seeing the number of positive cases going up. The relative severity is nowhere near what it was this time last year. So we've been able to re-implement the programming inside, albeit with some different modes of operating. In the community, we continue to be engaged. We've gotten away from some of the remote operations that we had there. And like everyone else, we're just trying to deal with a different environment in the community at large in terms of getting the agents out there to safely provide the services that we need to provide to the parolees and probationers who are committed to us. So we're going to build off of that. Right now, we're going to see what the holidays bring in the way of post-holiday COVID presence, and we'll govern ourselves accordingly.
Thank you, Secretary. And if Chairman Johnson's with us or someone from the board, we'd welcome any kind of comments or update from the parole board. All right, I'm going to take that as no. I do want to mention one project that we're involved in, and in fact, I believe Professor Rago is also actively involved in, taking a leadership role in, and that is the DOC homicide review team. So this is a review of cases where individuals are released from the Department of Corrections and subsequently are charged with a homicide. So I believe a year or two ago, we started the first round of this. It was part of the JRI2 legislation, I believe. And it was I thought a worthwhile project in terms of this sort of after the incident review. It clearly took a lot of work by the department and the board to put together the materials. And there was a large group impaneled to review this and ask questions. And the leadership of Professor Rago and former commission member, Professor Channinson from Villanova, really helped a lot in terms of sort of recording and helping us think through recommendations that we could make to the department. So having said that, I know Professor Rago's at the meeting. Professor, I don't know if you had any kind of comments you wanted to make. I think we're coming up on that. I believe it's next week.
I was just going to add, Mark, thank you. We do have a meeting coming up, I think the 16th and 17th for a second round of reviews, and Professor Janison and I are going to have a conversation with the acting secretary in a few days, I believe, just to review some of our preliminary thoughts on it before we have our meeting. But thank you for mentioning that.
Sure, thank you. Let me move on then to just some general reporting. The first item is commission staff, and sort of bittersweet, but I want to recognize two retirements of very long-serving commission staff, and I've asked them to be on board if they'd like. And of course, I can't control any of this technology, but I do want to recognize Diane Shoup and Linda Bell. So many of you know Diane most recently served as manager of our executive and policy support unit. She was invaluable in just all of the work we were doing in reviewing the current guidelines, but with any other policy related things, she was there. And she also just kept things organized and documents flowing, because that's, you know, the nature of our business at times. So Diane was great. I'd like to just tell you a little background on Diane. She was with the commission for 21 years, but she was with Penn State and the Commonwealth for 31 years, because prior to joining the commission, she was the head of the State Data Center, the Pennsylvania State Data Center, which was based at Penn State Harrisburg. And so when she left there, she was hired to a joint position that we had with PCCD. So through a grant, we hired Diane. So she was sort of an employee of the commission, but she was also an employee of PCCD. And she was doing some policy work and analysis for the two of us. And then we were really fortunate at some point to, when the grant was moving on, we were able to hire Diane, and she was with us ever since. And she worked in a number of capacities in the commission, all doing a great job in every capacity. But one of the things she did was she led what is now the Education and Outreach Unit. But as I said, more recently, really was actively engaged in all the work we were doing on policy things. So Diane retired in October. Sort of between our meetings. So we wanted to at least bring her back just remotely, just to provide the opportunity for members to just extend best wishes to her. So let me mention Linda next, and then turn it over to the chair in case he or any members have any comments. The second retiree is Linda Bell. Linda's been with the commission for 23 years. And as I think you know, Linda currently works in the Education Outreach Unit, but she is effectively our help desk for SGS Web. If you have any questions about SGS Web, go to Linda. And so talking about big shoes to fill, that's really going to be an effort. Clearly we have a lot of great people in that unit, and they've been they'll be pitching in. They've been working with Linda on a lot of things, but it's a void in terms of Linda leaving the commission. She's been always there. For a while, she was our JTAC, so she was the one responsible for helping people get access to JNet and to make sure that we were complying with all the rules of JNet and giving permissions to use SGS Web. But probably most important in that whole effort, she was responsible for organizing everything when the Pennsylvania State Police came in regularly for audits of JNet. And that can be an intimidating process. And she did incredibly well. We, passed with flying colors every time. And it's to her credit on that. So Linda was, a wonderful part of the commission staff. Prior to being the help desk person, she worked in effectively the data entry unit, but knows our data and our process in SGS Web like from the ground up. So we wish Linda well. Her last day will be December 31st. She's closing out the year with us. But I just wanted to recognize both Diane and Linda for their long service and their great contributions to the commission. And with that, let me just turn it to the chair and any members for any kind of comments.
Thanks, Mark. And most importantly, thanks to Diane and Linda. I mentioned, I guess yesterday, our terrific staff. I mean, we really, the caliber of our staff is just second to none. And that runs across the board, all areas of the commission. And Diane and Linda, your service here on the commission has been just terrific, and we really appreciate it. And we wouldn't be able to do all the things that we do, and we certainly wouldn't be held in the high regard that we're held in across the Commonwealth and across the country, frankly, if it weren't for your dedication and commitment to the commission. So thanks for your years of service, and we certainly wish you well moving forward. Are there any other members of the commission who want to offer sentiments? All right. Well, thank you very much. I, again, appreciate your years of service, dedication, and commitment to the commission and the Commonwealth, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.
Just wanted to jump
please.
in real quick to say I didn't have as much dealings with Linda Bell, but I understand the magnitude and impact of your service. So thank you. And then Diane, just on a more personal level, since we have had more interactions, you have been so instrumental and such a, on a personal level, such a joy, and will be missed terribly. So thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
And I know that neither Linda nor Diane are, it's not high on the list of either of them to make any comments, but I do want to just sort of make some space available in case either of you did want to say anything.
Just thanks for the kind words. Life is good on the other side, I will say that.
That is good to know.
Yes. I had a little PTSD there when I was listening to the end of the policy meeting, so. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure. Well, thank you both. Happy holidays and best wishes in your retirement. So take care.
Good luck.
I do want to mention one other parting, and this is again bittersweet, but Bill Nianke joined the commission, and I'm trying to find my notes here, sorry, about 2 years ago, so in October of 2019. And he's worked in our education outreach unit. Bill came to us from a long period of time in York County probation, not on probation, but as a probation officer. Bill is, this is sort of a novelty for the commission, but all good stuff for Bill. He was elected tax collector of West Manchester Township in York County during the recent election. Now, I believe it was uncontested, which is really great for all of the elected officials on our commission, knowing how wonderful it is to have a general election without competition. But I just wanted to again wish Bill well. He was really helpful. in the time with the commission. We're sorry to see him go, but this sounds like a great opportunity, and he sounds like the right person for it. So just want to wish Bill well, and just wanted to bring it to the attention of the commission that Bill will be moving on. And if any of you need tips from Bill in how to, run unopposed in a general election, maybe here's your opportunity, or you can talk to him offline. So, hey, Bill, I just wanted to make sure you were online, and if you wanted to say anything, you're welcome to, but otherwise, best wishes.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the acknowledgement. I'm grateful for the time I've had here. I've learned a ton over the last 2 years. Made a lot of great friendships, both here at the commission and across the state. So certainly I'll miss my coworkers. Couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with. I work in a great unit as well, the education outreach unit. I do very important work. So again, appreciate the opportunity. I wish you all the very best in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. And then moving on, the final sort of personnel issue that I wanted to mention was the hiring of Jawan Mitchell. And as I think Matt mentioned earlier, Jawan was with us. He interned out of our Harrisburg office. He's a student at, I believe, Penn State Harrisburg. But the focus of his internship was on some of the communications issues, and particularly the website. So he was like the advanced guard of all of the work that was done in rebuilding the website. I still have a file of his work, and so we're really happy to have Jawan join us. I don't know if Jawan is on the screen or not, but Jawan, I just wanted to welcome you on behalf of the commission, and look forward to all your time. I know he and Ryan and the whole unit have been working very hard, and Jawan's really, as many of you know, and Ryan can talk to this later, one of the responsibilities that sort of has fallen on Ryan's unit is really to sort of pick up the communications work of the commission. And so Jawan is really going to be a key part of that, has been already. He has a great background. So I don't want to go on any more, but, and Ryan can talk to any of this that he'd like to now or when he gives his report, but I just wanted to welcome Jawan. Ryan, any comments?
Thanks, Mark. I think I'll just reserve them for the education and outreach update.
That sounds great. Thank you. Okay, and so moving on some sort of vacant positions. We've had these retirements and resignations, and so we do have several vacant positions. There are 2 posted positions that I think we're closing in on some hires, but one for a data analyst and one for an education outreach specialist. And then we have yet to post 2 positions, and therefore Linda's position and for Diane's position. So we're looking at those job listings, and we hope to repost those in the near future. But an education and policy support manager, Diane's prior position, and STS web support, Linda's prior position. So we'll talk more about that. But the reason I mentioned both the vacant positions and the posted positions is we do really appreciate the efforts of commission members to help us in our recruiting, to identify individuals that might be good candidates. As the chairman said, I'm really proud of the staff that we've been able to assemble and the work that we do, and especially the work in the last couple of years during COVID. And so the quality of the staff is incredible, and we want to keep that up. So any suggestions, any support we can have from members, and also thinking about our concerns about diversity and broadening the staff, any help we can get is appreciated. I think what we've been doing recently is whenever we post positions, Jadine provides a posting or a link to it to all members, so that you're welcome to share that with anyone. So thank you on all of that. I'm going to move to management and oversight. So regarding COVID response, we're sort of, I think we're emerging a little bit from where we were. You know that during the during the depths of COVID, we were all remote. And again, kudos to staff, but also to sort of the support we had, both from Penn State and from internally, with Christy helping us navigate some of these things. But we were able to, put every person in a good place in terms of technology and support. And the quality of the work didn't decline. And in fact, I think we became more productive in some ways in setting up things remote. And so I'd say in the last 6 months, we've been sort of emerging from that, and we've sort of allowed staff to sort of figure out the right pace of returning to the office, or sort of the right way to work. And this is sort of done within the unit, trying to figure out what works best within the unit. So I think as we go into the new year, we'll have more people either in the office permanently, either in the Harrisburg or State College office, or working hybrid, being in the office a couple of days a week and working at home part of the time. And I suspect we'll have a handful of people that will remain remote, at least for the first half of the next year. And as I said, this has worked out well, and I think it speaks to the quality of our staff. So I'm happy that we can make those options available and work through Penn State to put those in place. So thanks to everyone on that. Final word I wanted to say under management and oversight. Okay, I said final, it won't be the final, but second to last under management and oversight is the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just wanted to update you on some activities with Lincoln University. And I want to thank Judge Tucker especially for his efforts and his engagement with this. Judge Tucker and I met with Professor Emmanuel Babatunde at Lincoln University in Oxford, I guess a month or two ago. And we were able to meet with the president of the university, and we had a nice lunch with the professor, but just talked about ways of the commission remaining engaged with Lincoln University. It's one of our historically Black colleges or universities, and the professor was involved with the academic review panel. And we were just looking for opportunities to continue to work with them, whether it leads to something like a partnership like we have with Penn State or Duquesne or Villanova. I don't know what will happen, but we talked about opportunities. One thing about sort of partnering on classes or presentations, other things like that, where staff from the commission could work with faculty and with students at Lincoln. We talked about the opportunity for student internships and things like that. And also we've looped Lincoln and Cheyney University in sort of the notice regarding positions that we have available, to try to make sure that they're aware of positions and that we can work on that. The other thing is the professor and with colleagues from other historically Black colleges and universities have been talking about like curriculum and programming that's much more sensitive to sort of the African experience. And he has some ideas about this. He's talked with colleagues about this, and he sees an application for some kind of programming that might be useful in the criminal justice system. And so we're going to continue discussions with him, see where this goes. There might be, opportunities because of Zoom to impanel some, roundtable discussions about what he has in mind. But it's been a really good opportunity to meet with him. I thank the commission members for helping to make the connection along with Cheyney, and I hope we can continue to pursue work with them. And I just wanted to again thank Judge Tucker and provide Judge Tucker with an opportunity, if he'd like, to make any comments, because as I said, he's been engaged in this process.
Thank you, Mark. And I just want to say thank you to you, because but for you, that experience would not have been afforded to me. And I think it was a great experience. And I think it has some value to it to move forward with it, as well as to connect with Cheyney as well, and keep them in mind as we move forward. so that there can be more minority participation in the work that we do. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Judge. Appreciate that. So now the last management and oversight thing that's not on the agenda, but I did want to talk a little bit about some efforts with Professor Mystic and whether there are specifically legal issues or sort of broader council support and engagement. But Professor Mystic's been really helpful in the last quarter, especially on a couple of fronts. And one has to do with our MOUs, our memoranda of understanding. Two of them are up for renewal, within the next year. And, one with Penn State, because these are 5-year MOUs that we do. So it expires in 2023, in June of 2023. And the second is with Duquesne Law, and same deadline, 2023. We have rolled over these MOUs for a number of cycles now, and so I see that as a real positive thing. We get a lot out of these partnerships. When Matt was talking about the website and all of the effort, the free effort we received from Penn State in terms of rebuilding the website, that's like a concrete example of the benefit of an MOU with Penn State. And so we have similar kind of benefits in our MOU with Duquesne and with Villanova Law School. And so anyhow, Professor Mystic and I have started discussions along with Professor Rago of reviewing the current MOU with Duquesne and seeing if there should be any changes as we discuss coming up with something we can bring to the commission for consideration during the next year. And not to put too fine a point on this, I guess, but my planned retirement from the commission is June 2023. So one of the things is to think about making sure these are structural things we have in place regarding MOUs, and not something that's about me. So I want to make sure that we're putting things in place that we're good to go, and we're good to go absent me. So I appreciate Professor Mystic's assistance in reviewing both the MOU with Penn State and with Duquesne, and the discussions with Professor Rago as well, to make sure that we review all the things we need to, and we make any kind of recommendations of changes that we can bring to the commission within the next year. So check that box. Two other things that I wanted to mention about Professor Mystic, we're using him a lot apparently. One is the data management plan. So Matt had mentioned that Brett and Christy have really taken the lead on reviewing and updating our data management plan. And this is about data security and data storage and data sharing, all those kind of things. And as some of you know, a number of years ago, we had a sort of a scare in terms of someone trying to breach our data through Penn State. And it led to some pretty serious consequences in terms of us not having access to data for quite some time with Penn State. Now we had access to data through our Harrisburg office, but nonetheless, that led to the development of a data management plan. And so it just seemed like the right time with Christy and Brett on board to revisit that and update that plan. And so they've been working on that. But there's sort of other aspects to that really necessarily involve Professor Mystic. And that is, we do have a contract or an agreement in place when we share data with others. And that's particularly important when we're sharing data that has sensitive information. And so we have, the professor and I have talked about revisiting some of the documents we have, perhaps having one of his students involved in helping to redraft some of the documents that we use. But also Professor Mystic and I met with the Office of General Counsel at Penn State, because as we start talking about the review of the MOU and the re-upping of an MOU, there's probably some aspects of the current MOU that we should tighten up a little bit. And so we're having some discussions just to make sure we're all on the same page. And this is, for the Penn State thing, it's an issue that's not new, but it's one that there's never an easy solution to. And that is that the employees of the commission are basically have two masters. We're legislative staff, we're Commonwealth employees, but we're also Penn State employees. And so this is just a good opportunity to look at that relationship and make sure that whatever we do in the MOU, is accounts for that kind of dual employment that commission staff has. So Professor Mystic's been really helpful in that. And as I said, we may bring on a student, as we've done in the past, to help to do some drafting or work through some of the issues. And the final thing with Professor Mystic and his engagement, and this also goes to Professor Rago, is that I've been working for the last year or so with our sort of our counterpart agency in Ohio, the Ohio Criminal Sentencing Commission, and their courts, their administrative office of the courts. And they've been building a new data platform, which is sort of a combination of JNet and AOPC's Common Pleas Case Management System and SGS Web. It's just this new enterprise that they're trying to develop in Ohio, and they've seen, they see a lot of positive things about what we've done in Pennsylvania. And so I've been just, engaged with them a little bit, sort of some, consulting work, whatever you want to call it, but just working with them to give them some insights about what we've done. And so they decided that they wanted to make a road trip to Pennsylvania. And so we decided that we didn't want them the whole way into the Commonwealth, but we figured Pittsburgh would be a good place to meet. And so Professor Rago and Professor Mystic have been really helpful in us starting to discuss how we could host a meeting for these folks from Ohio to really give them a better sense of how things operate here and sort of answer the questions they have. So I'll be engaging our staff, I'll be engaging some of the commission members, and clearly staff from other agencies like JNet and the AOPC and the courts more generally. So I just wanted to sort of notify members that that we are doing this in terms of just a courtesy, meet and greet or visit with folks from Ohio. But it just points out to the benefit of these relationships that we have, like this MOU with Duquesne. Aside from just the personal engagement with Professor Mystic and Professor Rago, the institutional connection we have with Duquesne Law is really helpful in trying to do these kind of things, like host a meeting and have a facility to use and have sort of connections with people in the area that could bring something to the table that we don't necessarily have. So it's just sort of a shout out to Duquesne and to the professors for their assistance. And with that, I just wanted to give Professor Mystic or Rago an opportunity to add anything or discuss any of these points.
Mark, we continue to enjoy working on all of these issues with the commission and with the staff. But I'm fully cognizant of the fact that if I can drag my feet a little bit, you might have to stay a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and so the final issue we have is, and I think we should go to the next page, unless there we go. Thank you. Is the last issue I have are the financial issues or fiscal issues. There's just two report outs that we have. We have the budget. We've provided you with the current operating budget. I don't think we have to take any action on it, but I want to thank Jay Dean for all of her work on managing this. And one of the things Jay Dean's done a really great job with recently is working with the university and with the criminology department to help to just make sure that we're appropriately tracking our support through the partnership we have with for research through the MOU with Penn State, and also helping us to sort of make sure that we are holding in reserve the funds that should be in reserve. As you know, we have 2 reserve accounts from the Commonwealth. One was put in place a number of years ago as sort of a reserve account, so that if the budget is not enacted, we would have several months of operating funds to work with. So we have that in a reserve account. And then we had a second reserve account that was, there was a time when there was a disruption of the budget and we were given a supplemental appropriation. So we treat that as a reserve account and we keep that separate. And what we try to do is make sure that those are whole. So when we were, hit with some big projects and we didn't have an increase in our funding, we had to tap into some of those reserves for that purpose. And now I'm really happy to say that those reserve accounts are fully funded and they're in a lockbox. And we have, and Jadine's worked with Treasury to make sure that we just sort of simplify that. So it's for record keeping, it's in place. So I just point that out, more detail than you probably need, but we want to be really transparent about some of these things. And so I wanted to brief you on that. So that's the key fiscal thing. The second is that you may recall that last year, the commission approved a 3-year cycle for our fiscal audits. And so last year was the first of 3 years of having an audit done. And so as we said at the last meeting, this year's audit, all we needed was approval from the commission to close out the last budget and then to start the audit. You approved that at the last meeting. We've notified the auditors and the audit will be underway. So we've signed off on getting that started. So unless there's any questions, or Jadine, unless I missed anything, I think that concludes the fiscal issues, and I'll turn it over to Matt. So Jadine, any other issues?
You said no, Mark.
Okay, thanks. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Matt for his report.
Thanks, Mark. So at the earlier policy meeting, of course, we went through the commission website. So I'll just reiterate one point is that is an ongoing process of adding new content, ensuring that all the content from the old page is represented on the new page, and thinking also of just new strategies for showcasing and sharing information with key criminal justice stakeholders throughout the Commonwealth. So I welcome any input or feedback if any members or others have an opportunity to review the website in terms of structure, content, or ideas just in general. So 2 other items to note. Building on the work of the revisions to the 8th edition guidelines, we've been discussing in great detail the possibility of adding or working with a visiting scholar or 2. And so working with Mark, of course, and the Department of Criminology and Sociology at Penn State University and the Criminal Justice Research Center at Penn State University, there was agreement that we could use some of the money in our partnership funds, the MOU with Penn State, to engage with a visiting scholar. And so the individual who's been identified is Reese Hester, Dr. Reese Hester, who's a professor at Clemson University. Reese was a fellow at Rabina Institute. If you remember, we mentioned Rabina at University of Minnesota yesterday. He was the former deputy director of the commission, and he was a member of the academic review panel. So Reese has a lengthy history of studying guidelines, thinking about especially prior record score, and we think that he can engage with us for the next year on a number of topics, especially as we think about some of what we presented yesterday is what's the impact of shifting from the 7th edition to the 8th edition guidelines. Does the prior record score make sense? And will there be a reduction in disparities, and what is that level of reduction? So we have a number of opportunities to work with Reese. We're hoping that Reese joins us in January of next year. It's been an interesting experience, not only dealing with one bureaucracy in Penn State, but dealing with Clemson University. So we're trying to iron out some language for the agreement, and hopefully that will be finalized in the coming days so that Reese can join us in the spring, or the spring semester, but in January. And so I think it's also a wonderful opportunity for staff to work with him. He's an experienced scholar. For the benefits he'll bring, of course, to the commission and our work and the research, as well as our graduate students and postdoctoral fellows who are currently at the commission. So there's a lot of value added of working with Dr. Hester over the coming year. And the final thing is, we've been fortunate to have 2 postdoctoral fellows or scholars with the commission for the last few years. We currently have 2 with us. And you saw Miranda Galvin, Dr. Miranda Galvin, present earlier. Miranda's in her 3rd year of her postdoc with us, and this will be her final year. So she'll be completing her postdoc. We haven't finalized the dates, but sometime in the summer of 2022 coming up. So given the way that the academic job market works, is people who are going to be receiving their PhD in the spring are usually on the market at about this time. So the commission, myself, and Mark are working with the Criminal Justice Research Center to put out a posting for a new postdoctoral scholar. And that position will begin in like August or September of next year. But critical to tap into this timing with the academic job market and to secure that. And we've been really fortunate to receive fantastic applicants in the past for these positions. Our 2 postdocs currently, Miranda's from University of Maryland, which is the #1 criminology program in the country. Our other postdoc, Claire Strange, got her PhD from the University of Cincinnati, who also is in the top 5 programs and has a real focus on the intersection, not just of basic sentencing research, but applied research. And she comes to us with a lot of experience with risk assessment trainings and understanding how risk assessments are validated, and other practical experiences working with departments of corrections in Florida and New York, and a general understanding of the criminal justice system. So while we're sad to see Miranda leaving us, she's done tremendous work and been an incredible value added to the commission, as you saw her presentation and her ability on a number of these projects. But we're confident that we will be able to identify another seasoned and experienced scholar who will be able to assist us. And I think that last comment is, we kind of envision that we'd have 2 postdocs and they'd be staggered. So Claire will move into the position of senior postdoc. We'll have a new postdoc, because the data structure in our data and just the policies, it's complicated. So it takes a while for that individual to get up to speed, but we hope that we could plug the new person in quickly. And again, I think that this is just one more opportunity to echo what Mark emphasized, that if anyone knows of individuals who would be well suited for that position, certainly encourage them to apply. We hope, again, to have talented and qualified folks apply for that position. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I'll turn it back to the chairman.
All right. Thank you all for the information. Moving on to application and information technology. Christy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. So the applications and IT unit has been staying quite busy. The biggest part of our job is to make sure that SGS Web accurately reflects the guidelines, related statutes, and sentencing practices. And it seems like, users or the education outreach team uncover something every week that needs to be fixed or tweaked in order to do that. So we always have a steady flow of maintenance work that needs to be done. We just deployed some changes to the SGS Web production environment on November 15th. So this release included a change that allows users to enter a concurrent county and state confinement on one judicial proceeding. Previously, SGS Web would error if a user tried to do that, but we learned that there are situations where that may occur. So SGS Web now allows it so that the sentence can be recorded accurately. We also found some bugs in the Amendment 6 changes that we had deployed back in September related to the calculation of the aggregate sentence for aggregate probation guidelines. So a fix for that was included in the November release. And lastly, we implemented some improvements to the logging of warnings and errors produced by SGS Web, but that was more for our staff to use to research application issues reported to us. We have another deployment planned for this coming Tuesday, December 14th. In this release, we're correcting how SGS Web determines the most serious offense in a judicial proceeding for the sentence risk assessment module. We were using OGS as kind of our primary determinant and then using statutory maximum as the tiebreaker. So to be more consistent with policy and other applications that determine the most serious offense, we're reversing that logic to use statutory maximum as the primary factor and OGS as the tiebreaker. So we don't think it'll make a lot of difference because those two things kind of are more in parallel, but it may change a few scenarios. Along with that, we also have implemented a handful of other changes and fixes to address minor issues that have kind of been on our to-do list for a while. I did want to mention that, for any changes we make in SGS Web, the Education Outreach Unit plays a large role in helping us understand the requirements and the policy and helping us test the changes and communicate them to users. So I just wanted to give them a shout out and thank them for their assistance with that. While we're still maintaining the existing version of SGS Web, we are turning our focus to the SGS Web Next Gen project, or the rebuild of the SGS Web application. It's going to be a pretty significant undertaking, so we're trying to break it up into a few phases in order to make it more manageable. Phase 1, which is already kind of underway, we're focusing on the technology prototyping and looking at the user experience design and architecture. To this end, our unit has already started work on improvements to the data management module, utilizing the technology that we plan to use for the rebuild. So this will only impact kind of the commission or the staff that use that particular module, but it'll give us a good kind of testing ground to test a few things out. We are also considering partnering with a vendor to help us with the redesign, especially kind of the process flow, the UX design, and some of the architectural aspects. The deputy director and I spoke to 3 vendors to discuss how they might approach the project and how we might leverage their expertise on it. And we are now I'm working with the deputy director and the executive director to draft an RFP to solicit some formal proposals for the project from vendors. So there'll be more to come on that. The second phase, we plan to focus on the implementation of the 8th edition guidelines and kind of redesigning the parts of the applications that would be most affected by the new guidelines. So the PRS calculation, the offenses, and the sentence recommendation and guideline forms. Obviously, we don't know exactly what the 8th edition is going to look like, especially after yesterday's discussions, but there's a lot of work that we can still do in SGS Web to prepare for the 8th edition that will also improve the overall functionality of the application. So we can definitely move forward on that. And then the third phase, we plan to focus on kind of some more overall improvements to the application, specifically like the navigation, moving to a more offender-based structure versus right now we're a very sentencing event-based structure, and redesigning the functions that collect the data about the actual sentence imposed and conformity to the guidelines. And then the last phase will focus on implementing new functionality for the state parole guidelines and recommitment ranges once we get those passed. As far as additional unit efforts, we're currently, as Mark mentioned earlier, we've been reviewing the commission's data management plan and working with the research and data analytics unit, so Brett, to revise the policies and procedures to reflect current requirements in the environment. Matt showed you the website earlier in the policy meeting, so we supported that effort as well. And we have also been supporting the development of a new public dashboard in Power BI that Brett will be probably talking about a little bit more during his unit update. The last thing I'll mention is the SGS web usage. So through the end of September 2021, there were 31,967 sentences that have been submitted with 2021 dates of sentence. So it's a lot less than we saw last year, but I know, everything's kind of down because of COVID. And that is all I have for today. So I'll turn it back over to the chairman.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to research and data analysis, Brett.
Thank you, Chairman Stevens. I just want to start by talking about some staffing issues in the unit. I'm happy to announce the hiring of Jordan Zvankovic as a data analyst in the unit. Jordan started with us as a full-time staff member in October, but he had actually spent close to 5 years with us as a graduate assistant before that. So he's got a lot of experience that he brings to the commission. And he's already done a lot of work to help us out with the risk assessment project. And he's done a lot of work to help with 8th edition sentencing guidelines as well. We still do have one opening for an additional data analyst. With that hire, that will bring us up to our full complement of staff. So we hope to make that hire early in 2022. We continue to get a lot of external requests for sentencing information. That includes a full year's data sets that are requested by researchers from Penn State and many other universities. And in addition to that, we've received over the last 3 months, 12 separate requests for data reports. So these are more detailed reports that require a little analysis on our part. But we've shared those with members of the legislature, PennDOT, and journalists from USA Today, among others. And finally, on the commission website, we have our SASBI data portal where users can log on and request custom data reports. We actually saw a large increase in the amount of users requesting that information. We had 228 custom data requests out of that SASBI portal over the last 3 months, which is almost double than what we would normally have in a quarter. So as Mark mentioned, the data within that SASBI portal is close to 2 years out of date at this point. And unfortunately, we don't have the ability to update with new data. So despite the stale data, we are still getting a lot of usage there. However, it just highlights the importance of us being able to get that system replaced. And we've begun that work already. As Christy mentioned, we're developing a series of data dashboards that will sort of highlight big picture data summaries for sentencing within the state of Pennsylvania. And in addition, we'll have a direct replacement of the custom report tool. So in my opinion, the new reports will actually be a little more powerful than what we have now. Users will be able to select from a wider variety of fields and select from current data as well as historical data going back a number of years. So we hope to have those implemented within the next few months and hopefully by the March commission meeting. In addition, on the commission website, we're in the process of updating our commission bibliography, which is essentially a collection of all published research that we've been able to find that utilizes the commission's data or focuses on the commission in general. We've got a list of over 100 publications that we've put together so far, and we'll keep adding to that over time. And we'll also get that posted to our commission website. And finally, I'll just touch quickly on a few different research projects that the unit is working on. Number one is an analysis of youthful offender sentencing. So when we say youthful offenders, this refers to anyone aged 18 to 25. There's growing research, psychological research that indicates that older adolescents between the ages from 18 all the way up to 25, they still have developing brain chemistry, and this can lead them to make more impulsive decisions, lead them into more reckless behavior. And so we were interested to see what that looks like in Pennsylvania in terms of crimes being committed by that age group. And then also if we can find anything that shows us how that group is being treated in the sentencing process, whether that's different sentencing alternatives or different lengths of sentences. And what we found is that that group is more likely to be sentenced to non-confinement sentences than the older adult group. However, as maybe would be expected, that younger group does commit a higher proportion of serious offenses. So your violent offenses, firearms offenses, things of that nature. We'll continue to look into that and hopefully have a final report on that within the next few months. We're also doing an additional study on the impact of COVID-19 on sentencing in Pennsylvania. Dr. Kleiman and Dr. Shoup did an initial analysis earlier this year that looked at the rates of sentencing and any differences in proportions of sentencing due to COVID. We're digging a little bit deeper on that, see not just any changes to sentencing, but trying to dig deeper and look at the geographic differences there and how quickly things are bouncing back. And finally, we're working on the PUFA analysis related to House Resolution 111. Miranda and Matt presented on that this morning at the policy meeting. But we'll continue to do more in-depth analysis on that project as we move forward into the beginning of 2022. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you very much, Brett. Moving on to Ryan for education and outreach.
All right. Well, thank you. There are a number of items on the screen. I'm only going to cover a few of them, but if you want the details, you can reference the supplemental materials, pages 50 through 85. But I think the first thing on the slide is maybe most notable. Back in the early fall, we submitted on behalf of the commission an application to become a provider for CLE credits. And I'm happy to say that the PA CLE board has approved our status as a provider. And that's twofold, that we can provide CLEs in person and also for distance learning. So that's a great benefit to us as staff and certainly to the commission. Since we've been provided or approved that provider status in October of this year, we've held 3 and we've been testing out our processes. We have to learn some new tactics here and ways to track things, because in the past we've had a long history of submitting for approval for individual sessions, but now we get to give that approval on our own. And so that's great. And I'll be working with J.D. and others to figure out what our processes are moving forward for, just procedures for registration, for payment and tracking for CLE credits. But I can say that from the education outreach unit, we're really excited to be able to do this, to know that when we provide our education, that we can provide that to attorneys. So there you go, that provider status for CLE. And then just related to that, when we host our fundamental seminars and many of our seminars, we also submit for CJE credits. And we've had great success working with the PACJE board to receive CJE credit approval. And I suspect moving forward into 2022, many of the sessions that we would be providing CLE credits for will be also working with the PACJE board to have CJE credits. And so that's been a great addition to our suite of services that we offer the Commonwealth from an education and outreach perspective. The next piece is SGS Web related. And as Mark covered the staffing updates with Linda's retirement, certainly this is going to be something new for us. Linda has handled the SGS Web help desk for over 15 years. And I can say that in my time in county probation, I would call Linda. So it's sort of bittersweet on 2 fronts for me. But the unit has done a great job in prepping for this. And we are in the final stages of developing a help desk ticketing system. And so there's a bit of a shift on how we're viewing the help desk. It's always been Linda, but we really do see it as an education and outreach support effort, and that comes from the entire unit. And so we'll be finalizing that up with the hopes of rolling out a help desk ticketing system for January of next year. And they're still going to receive responses from real human beings. It's just a way for us to, pull all of these inquiries into one space and allow the unit as a whole to respond to them. So we're on, sad to see Linda go, but also excited to develop this new ticketing system. And I think the last thing that I'll mention here, so we can continue to move along, is the communication side of things that Mark had mentioned. And Jawan is with us here in the room today, and he's been helping with the IT support with Christy and I. And so we appreciate that. Thank you, Jawan. Jawan and I have been working in great detail over the last few weeks on project management, and that's both internally and also externally related to the commission's communications. And so we're just looking like holistically at what all are we doing from an education and outreach unit perspective, and how that ties in to everything that the commission does, to the meetings that we're holding today and so forth. And I appreciate all of Jawan's efforts on getting me organized on some of those fronts. But we see that as really important. Much of what we communicate out of the education and outreach unit impacts all of the units and certainly impacts the commission. And so we'll be working on that front to, monitor things like the website, make sure that we're providing updates there and keeping that fresh. And also, think about the monthly updates that we provide. And we have services through this constant contact application where we can send out email blasts to specific individuals or specific groups to communicate messages that are appropriate and necessary for the commission. So again, thanks to Jawan, happy that he's on board and assisting on that front. And then I'll just leave you with a couple pieces of some metrics from the year. I think the unit has held over 60 sessions this year, some in person as we come out of COVID, certainly, but over 90 hours of education and outreach to the state. And so we've been tracking that a little bit, and we'll see next year. I suspect it'll be a bit higher, but I thought that was just some interesting information. So thanks for the time. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. I guess we're moving back over to Mark, right? For
Sure.
the next session for policy support.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. First, I wanted to just add a couple comments to Ryan's presentation. First, I want to commend Ryan for all the work that was involved in getting the commission authorization as a PA-CLE provider. That's, as Ryan said, for years we've been doing CLE approved sessions, but we would just submit for approval and pay them $25 a shot to do that. And but it was, so this is not new as far as providing CLE content or CJE content, but being a provider is a big deal, and it gives the commission some autonomy and a lot of flexibility. And Ryan had mentioned that he's already done a handful of CLE approved sessions that we approved ourselves. But I think what was notable was at least a couple of those were the lunch and learn presentations that Ryan does for the General Assembly. So I think that was a really nice opportunity for those lunch and learn sessions to provide legislators and staff of the General Assembly with credit for a presentation. And one of the things that I'll point out related to lunch and learns is oftentimes these are open to the public, other people can attend, but there are times when in discussions with the Judiciary Committee or the General Assembly as a whole, there may be a session they'd like to have sort of crafted just for members or just for staff. And being a provider gives you a little more ability to do those kind of closed sessions. So again, thanks to Ryan for all of his work in making this happen. And look, it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have a track record of presentations that we could submit to them that would qualify for us, and that's both in-person sessions and remote sessions. So again, great job, Ryan. The other thing I wanted to point out about education and outreach is that, and this relates to MOUs, the other MOU that we have is with Villanova Law. And one of the reasons we have that is that we collaborate with Villanova and with the Administrative Office of the Courts to run the Villanova Sentencing Workshop every spring. And many of you have participated in that. What's remarkable is this year will be our 20th anniversary. So it's hard to believe that that's happening, but for 20 years we've conducted that workshop, and I think it's been good for judges. I think it's been great for the students that participate. But we also learn a lot. It's I always talk about it as being our sandbox for policy, where we can talk about things we're talking about through the commission and sort of test out concepts with that group. So he's not with us today, but I want to just extend our thanks to Professor Chanenson at Villanova for taking the lead on that and keeping it going, and to Dr. Steve Filer, who's head of education at the Administrative Office of the Courts, for being a partner on this. So it's been a great thing, and I hope we can continue it for another 20 years. So with that, let me move to the policy issues. And the first is just sort of a quick summary of some of the legislation moving through the General Assembly that I just wanted to bring to your attention. So the first, we've already talked about the House Resolution 111. You've heard a lot about that, so I don't have to say any more. And I mentioned this morning there were other firearms related bills that are in the General Assembly that I think all of that together, it's a holistic way of thinking about firearms and violence, and how research that we have can help contribute to information the General Assembly used to create policy. So that's a package of things. One bill that was enacted during the past quarter was Act 71, and that deals with, it requires the commission to create an enhancement for those circumstances where an individual either causes or aids in a suicide or an attempt to a suicide. And it really focuses on vulnerable victims. So individuals under 18 years of age, individuals with intellectual disabilities, or individuals on the spectrum. So we have, with some of the work that we've been doing with the 8th edition guidelines, preparations around that, we have built this into the enhancement section as a recommended enhancement. But we wouldn't take any formal action on this until we take formal action on the 8th edition guidelines. So that's down the road. But I just wanted you to know that we're aware of the bill, and it's in your materials, and we built it into the draft enhancement section of the work we've been doing with the 8th edition guidelines. There's of course plenty of other legislation being considered in the General Assembly, and as you know, we often get requests for doing an impact analysis or requests for information from either appropriations or judiciary committees. And so some that we have received calls about or have been in discussions on was House Bill 1836 that deals with child torture. Deanna's bill, which is the DUI bill, House Bill 773. I think there's also a Senate Bill 773, but really looking at enhanced penalties for DUI related issues. And then the probation reform. The senator mentioned yesterday probation reform legislation. I know District Attorney Sunday and I talked about it a little bit last night. There's a couple bills out there. One of the bills that was that received some action in the past and in previous sessions was what is now Senate Bill 5, which included caps on probation, things like that. It appears, the more active bill right now is Senate Bill 913, and that really focuses, as I think was at least the DA mentioned, it really focuses on technical violations of probation and some suggestions or some policies related to that to avoid use of incarceration for technical violations. So those are bills that were involved with the General Assembly along with the firearm stuff, and we'll just keep you posted on any action on any of those. The moving to the policy development area, we spent all of yesterday talking about the 8th edition or work on the 8th edition guidelines, and we've spent the last year or two in some pretty deep dives into that. And we've spent the last 8 years working on it. So there's a lot of activity there. I did want to mention, I have noted there that I have 2 upcoming meetings to just discuss guidelines generally and anything the commission should consider if we're modifying the guidelines related to specific areas. So as you may know, I'm a member of the task force on child pornography. That was a task force established by the General Assembly, and the executive director of the commission is a member. So we've had a couple of meetings of the task force. The commission has provided a lot of data to the task force because we're mandated under the statute that deals with child sexual abuse with pornography to track that information and make it available. So we've done that. And I've had discussions with staff at PCCD about giving a presentation on how the guidelines operate and some of the data we've collected on child pornography. And at least at this point, we're targeting their January meeting for that discussion. Also, as a follow-up to discussions that the commission has had about juvenile justice issues, whether it's juvenile adjudications or youthful offenders or transfer cases or what have you. I've had discussions with the executive director of the Juvenile Court Judges Commission, Rick Steele, and he invited me to meet with the JCJC during their next meeting in February to just talk generally about their views on the use of juvenile adjudications in the prior record score. We've talked to them in the past about that, and happy to hear their views and bring those back to the commission. One of the things that I think some members raised at the last meeting about like violent offenses, crimes of violence, things that we talked about in the adult system as crimes of violence under section 9714. In the juvenile side, maybe there's a different formulation for that or different offenses. And the one group of offenses that's often pointed to for violent juvenile offending and adjudications is sort of the list of transfer offenses. So I compiled a list, I think I shared it with members a month or two ago, of just sort of outlining what are the crimes of violence, what are the crimes under Chapter 63 of the Juvenile Act that are violent crimes. And I also shared that with Rick Steele and asked him for, take a look at it and trying to determine, if we were to come up with a list of juvenile offenses, juvenile adjudications that the commission should be thinking differently about in terms of any kind of lapsing policies or anything else, what's that list look like? And so again, when I get that kind of information, I'll share it with the commission. It can help you to make decisions about anything you'd want to do relative to juvenile adjudications. And as Brett said during his report, one area he's looking at is that youthful offender population between 18 and 25, the sort of brain development issue, just investigating so that we know more about that population. We can share it with you for however you want to use it. But for a while, we've had collaboration discussions with the Juvenile Court Judges Commission and with faculty member out at the University of Pittsburgh about sort of transfer cases and cases that don't transfer, sort of thinking about looking at a pool of offenders and think maybe age 16 to 25 or 16 to 21, something like that. Individuals that might be in the juvenile justice system, might be in the criminal justice system. So it depends if it was a transfer, if it was a decertification, a lot of things in play, but it's sort of an opportunity to look at sort of these two different pathways and figure out, is there more that we should know about, like what works or what works better for certain individuals in terms of, is the juvenile justice path the better one to reduce recidivism, to safeguard the community, or is the transfer, the criminal justice system, the better approach? And I don't know that we know a lot about that, but but we've provided a lot of data to the University of Pittsburgh on this, and we've engaged in discussions, and that'll be an ongoing thing. And while it's about sort of a broad group of violent offending things that would be subject to transfer, another sort of subset of that are cases involving murder, right? And especially murder 1 and murder 2. So just trying to see how that all operates. So nothing that we can share with you at this point, but I wanted to highlight that because Brett's talked about the work he's doing, and we have some sort of collateral or complementary research going on. So that's the issue on those kind of policy development things. I think this is the opportunity now to just talk about next steps regarding our work with reviewing and rebuilding the sentencing guidelines. And if I could just start with a quick kind of summary of some things we've talked about and things I've heard, and then maybe just to open it up for how you'd all like to proceed. So there is a concern that I've heard, and I think, I think maybe is obvious, that we have to be very careful about this proposal that we've been putting together over 8 years. And it's been sort of stacking on things, and there's a little bit of a legacy to it. The starting point of it was the strategic planning work group, and they developed sort of the backbone of this, or the framework, and we've been adding to it or taking away, but it's this continuum that we've been working on. And so what we have today is sort of the result of a lot of years of tinkering and then some big changes that maybe wouldn't have been recommended by the strategic planning work group, but was recommended by the academic panel, and vice versa, right? So it's been a process. So, there's things in this that I'm not thrilled about, but it is what it is. And so one of the cautions I think that has come out of our recent discussions is, these aren't guidelines we're putting out there. This is a working draft. This is a preliminary proposal. This is something that's still being shaped. And what we've talked about is an opportunity to engage more people in reviewing it and discussing it with us and trying to help to improve it. So I appreciate that caution about how we frame this, how we discuss this, or even how we label what we've done. But whether it's a working draft or preliminary proposal or whatever you want to call it, I think there is a lot of benefit because there's so many changes and so many moving parts to have a public discussion, both with general open meetings that we discuss about it, but also that we start to meet with really important interest groups, the DAs, the trial judges, the public defenders, PACTL, you name it, a lot of individuals that work with guidelines and have strong views about this. So that's one thing. The second thing that I heard was there's a lot of stuff here. We've built a lot of information, and some of us have been deeply engaged in this, so it gets very tedious, and there's just way too much detail. We need a narrative. We need sort of a quick summary. We need like a big picture. Like, why are we doing this? Why is it necessary? Why are these changes necessary? What are we trying to achieve? So I think, I think, that elevator talk that we talked about is missing. And I know that can be jarring when you look at all of this and we get into these tedious discussions. So clearly that's something staff has to do to frame this out before we move too far forward. And then just regarding the proposals themselves, I think there have been plenty of comments made about things that maybe we should look at more closely, things that we should consider, things that should be in the mix or taken out of the mix. So, some of the things that I've heard about is the general direction makes sense in terms of it makes sense to have a recommendation that's primarily about a disposition and maybe a tighter range. But maybe we overdid that. Maybe the range is too tight. or maybe we have like too many bands or too many bands in the wrong place. So, like with probation, we have 6 levels, and maybe we get away with 4, and maybe they could be a little bit more of a range, and maybe we could be more thoughtful about what happens to step it up or step it down, use of restrictive conditions, things like that. With county jail, we have 9 categories, and it's like a 1 step each, and maybe that's too much, and those ranges are really narrow. So maybe you combine some of those, or you broaden them, or you overlap them, and maybe you get down to 6 of them instead of 9. Something that provides courts with a little more discretion, takes into account more things. So clearly, great ideas to discuss, and it gets to the point that this isn't a finished product. It's something that has developed over years, and we need to continue to look at it. There were discussions about the concept of building in adjustments and enhancements, that it's sort of a step up, step down, that it's a little bit more mechanical, but it also sort of captures typical and common reasons for aggravation or mitigation. I think makes a lot of sense, and it simplifies the guidelines if you build it into the system. But what are those things, and how much weight do you give them? That was an important factor. So we have like a starting point, but it could be that we're not giving enough weight to mitigating or aggravating factors. So thinking about those, and are there other factors that we missed that we should be plugging in there that are worth considering? And then just generally aggravating and mitigating ranges, what's the right width of those? If we're narrowing the standard range and saying, we want to be more directive in what the recommendation is, maybe we have to be more generous in the aggravated and mitigated range. So that the months that we have listed now are pretty tight, and maybe there's an opportunity to expand on those, or just look at each level and figure out what a better fit might be. So I think that's certainly in the mix of things that we've talked about. And then we get to the 2 other fundamentals. One is the OGS assignments. What is the point value you give to a given offense? And as I said, there's over 2,000 of these that you got to do. So we need sort of a system, and I think we've made changes consistent with the discussions of the commission, and that's been really positive in terms of, I think, getting closer to something that I think fits what the commission talked about, using the current guidelines as a footprint and sort of figuring out what part of the current guidelines, if you're going to tighten it and have a given disposition, what's the best fit. So I think that's been helpful in staff working on this. But there's still going to be cases where you're going to look at it and say, that's just not right. I mean, it should be this or that. And that's the prerogative of the commission. So what we're looking for is, are we sort of in the ballpark? Are we generally where we should be? And if not, what more work do we have to do on that? And then, the biggest thing is prior record score. That the intent over time was try to reduce the impact. And part of that is because of the racial impact. And we're certainly committed to looking at that and trying to figure out that issue. But I know it's jarring because we're making these big changes to something that's been in place for many, many years. And so the first question is why even do it? Like why has it been good for so long and now we're changing it? And the second is, if you're going to change it, how do you do it responsibly? How do you make sure you're safeguarding the public safety and things like that? So, we hear all those things and trying to reconcile these. Back at the start of the commission in the 80s, 70s, you looked at the research on the time because they were just building guidelines the first time. And there was a big discussion about whether you even have a prior record score, like what's the justification? And those that advocated against a prior record score said, we should punish people on why they're in the court. So we might want to give bigger punishments, but the focus should be on what crime you committed. What's the statutory max? What are the penalties, and what's the appropriate punishment for this offense? And less focus on prior record. So that sort of has guided. It's not that we get rid of prior record score, but it does. There's something that rings true about punishing the person or holding the person accountable for what they did with some recognition of a criminal history. And that's why I said last night that, one thing to consider is if you're concerned about too much of a pullback on prior record score, I just encourage people to look at the offense gravity score and say, is that where, are we right there, or are we underdoing things at that point? Because if you can justify, if you think the sentence is right for a first-time offender, then the question is, how much more do you do for someone who comes back into the system? And how do you accommodate some of those concerns in terms of what you're dealing with in the offense gravity score assignment versus what you have as this legacy thing for criminal record? And then that gets to that whole discussion of lapsing. What records go away and when, and does it require law-abiding behavior, gap, or is it just at some period of time it goes away, decay? So big issues for the commission. A lot of this is, these are big changes. And so the discussion we've had was, how do we engage the public without saying, like, this is the done deal, because we haven't had public engagement. So with that, and I apologize for the long summary, but I wanted to capture what we've talked about for 8 years, and certainly for the last 2 days, to turn it back to Representative Stevens to sort of figure out what we can do at this point. Can we approve something? Can we publish something for public hearings? Can we have public hearings or meetings in the spring to kickboard things in, let's say, February or March? And then also continue to have meetings with all these important parties so that, in June we can come back to you, or in March we can come back to you with better information and a refinement of this, that we continue this process. So Rep. Stevens, sorry for the long talk, but let me turn it to
No
you.
problem. There's a lot of history and a lot of ground to cover, so I appreciate the backdrop. I guess I'll open up the floor to commission members for thoughts or ideas along these lines. I guess the penultimate question is, are we ready to publish something? And if so, what, under what parameters? So I guess with that backdrop, maybe we can open it up for discussion. Any commission members here have any? Oh, Brian? Oh, Judge Daly, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I just say, if not now, when? I think I think this is ready to go, and I think we have to now go out to the stakeholders and find out what they think about it, and then put those thoughts and suggestions together and see how we can refine it into a better product. But I think now's the time to move forward.
All right. Any Judge Bernstein?
Yeah, thank you. I feel in a more wordy way, I agree with Judge Daly. I think in terms of substance, delaying to another time isn't going to really modify what's being presented. And I think the only thing that needs some refinement is how it's packaged. But I think that is something that can be done if we approve to send these out. So I think that in itself shouldn't be enough to cause us to delay. And I feel like anything else we do now is maybe even counterproductive, just because if we try and refine more before we get input, we're just going to be backing up further. So I concur with the idea of getting it out there now. Just make sure we package it well so that we're informing people appropriately.
What was that? Judge Tucker?
Yeah, I agree with Judge Daly and Judge Bernstein. Just so get it out there, see what the public comments are, and work from there, as opposed to doing anything else.
All right. DA Sunday?
Just very briefly, I agree that we should definitely get it out for comment. I think it's important to make sure that we emphasize the nature of this in that it is a draft and that it's critical for us to seek input from all of our, our partners across the criminal justice spectrum. And that, again, this is by no means a final product. I just think it's important for people to understand that this was put together and it's now in a form where it's manageable for discussion, and this is very likely not to be the end product.
All right. Any other commission members, either in person or online?
I just,
Professor Reagan?
nothing of material to add other than I agree with everyone, and packaging is important. We talked about it last night, and I know Professor Mystic had some thoughts on that as well. So Mark, did you want us to defer to the chair and vice chair to help you with that packaging, or how do you want to
What I was
proceed
going to
with that?
suggest is if there's support for this, based on sort of what I mentioned or outlined, we'll put together a draft to get to all members to review and comment on, and then we'll modify that, and then we'll we'd ask the commission today to delegate to the chair and vice chair the approval of whatever's going to be published, because that way staff will pull it together, you all get to see it and comment, but then the chair and vice chair get to decide when it's ready to put out, and the right caveats are part of it, and then that would move it along. We'd get something out early in the new year and have hearings, meetings, whatever we want to call them, in I say February into March, so that we have some information to discuss during the March meeting, and then we can continue the process beyond that, but at least to keep the process on track.
That's great. Thanks, Mark.
Hey, Mark, you're back to the technical difficulties we were experiencing earlier. So I don't know if whatever you did last time, maybe try it again. If you did anything.
Or I'll just shut up for a while, but yeah.
All right. Any other commission members have any feedback or comments? All right. I think DA Sunday, your hand is up. Is that still up from the last time, or is that a new comment?
No, just thank you. Just one other comment I'd like to make, and I just want to thank all the staff from the Commission on Sentencing for the work that you put into putting the potential 8th edition sentencing guidelines together. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of work and in particular thoughtful work that went into doing this. And so I just want to let everyone know how much I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a great point. We, at each of the last few meetings, as we've raised issues, the staff has really done a terrific job trying to address those. For what it's worth, I mean, I agree with all the sentiments that have been expressed. I think that I do really think it's important for all the stakeholders. Hopefully these comments are heard, and maybe we can figure out a way in the presentation, Mark, as you consider how to present this to the stakeholders, to really emphasize that, this is a draft. We expect it to change based on the feedback that we receive. And, we certainly are hoping for constructive feedback, hopefully as much positive as negative, but either way constructive, with an eye towards developing, an outstanding product for practitioners across the Commonwealth. So I just hope that we can convey that message so that folks don't expect that what we're publishing is, a done deal, and we really want constructive feedback and ways to improve it. So how do we package this into a motion, Mark, that addresses your needs here?
Well, first, let me thank DA Sunday and you and everyone else for your kind comments and for all of staff's work. They've done a tremendous job, especially recently. Matt and Brett have spent a tremendous amount of time on this. So thank you for that. And here's the thing, when we come up with a draft, the same thing you just said about public comment I think applies to the draft. We want to make sure, we're in a little sort of echo chamber, and we want to make sure that what we're producing makes sense to you, that it hits the sort of the right tone that you want to communicate. So when we send that draft, we really would appreciate comments on it, and then we'll do any kind of refinement and then get it to the chair and vice chair for final approval. As far as how to move forward, I think a motion to authorize staff to prepare a draft based on the discussions of the last 8 years or the discussions of yesterday and today, however you want to frame it, in order to prepare a document for publication subject to approval by the chair and vice chair.
All right. Is there a motion to that effect?
I will make that motion.
Was that Attorney Marsico?
Attorney Marsico.
Yes.
Great. Is there a second?
Second, Judge Dally.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right. It's been moved and seconded to authorize staff to move forward with a draft of the 8th edition sentencing guidelines, reflecting the prior conversations of the commission. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right, let me do it. There's a little bit of a lag here, I think. All right, let me do it this way. Are there any negative votes? All right, hearing none, the motion passes.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you all very much. The final issue I have is just sort of a couple of the outstanding proposals. So this morning we talked about state parole guidelines and state parole recommitment ranges. And the discussion at the time was that we move forward with effectively a beta version. So what I would ask for approval for, and I don't know that we need a vote on this, was that staff will prepare an updated version of the parole guidelines and recommitment ranges to present during the March meeting. And if approved at that time, we will hold one more public hearing on it, or a round of public hearings in, let's say, May. And then at the June meeting, we would be prepared for the commission to act on that, to vote to adopt, and then to submit to the General Assembly. So if there's no objections to that being the process, we'll build towards putting that on the March agenda.
Anyone have any objections to that process?
All right,
Seems
great,
okay.
thank you.
Seems okay from here.
Good. And then the final issue was the model pretrial domestic violence risk assessment. I know this is one of those things like trying to figure out the right time and what have you, but I think where we left it last was staff had prepared recommendations about change to the statute in terms of domestic violence risk assessment for pretrial. And so those were never submitted to Judiciary Committee or any formal kind of movement on that. So I think we defer to the legislative members to decide how to proceed on that. The other thing is we've not engaged at all with courts, with president judges about the ODARA. And look, COVID's in the way. So, but as we start moving away from that, thinking into the new year about the legislation related to that, and then any activities we do with counties related to that is like this open issue. So it'd be helpful, let's say at the March meeting, to be able to start moving on that again. And if there's anything between now and then that the staff can do, but I just wanted to put it on your radar so that this doesn't drop off. We did a lot of work to get to the model, and then we're sort of in stasis the last year or two. So hoping to address that issue.
Mark, I can follow up with you after the meeting and we can strategize. I know we've had a lot of conversations about this, but we can come up with a concrete action plan to engage the members of the legislature that need to be engaged on this particular issue, and maybe get some meetings scheduled in January so that we can move this process forward. I'll be
That
happy
sounds
to
great.
take the lead with you on
That's
that.
great. And I know it's that's great. I appreciate that. I think that's a great plan. That's all I have for policy. The final item we have is next year's calendar. So I can quickly cover the dates that the responses we've received and see if there's consensus around the dates for the meetings.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we offered 8 dates, sort of 2 dates per month or 2 sets of dates per month in terms of having the meetings, always a Wednesday, Thursday. And based on the responses we received for the March meeting, the choices were March 2nd and 3rd versus March 9th and 10th. The consensus was March 9th and 10th. The second set was June 1st and 2nd or June 8th and 9th. The consensus was June 1st and 2nd. The third was September 7th and 8th or September 14th and 15th. Consensus was September 7th and 8th. And the final one was December 7th and 8th or December 14th and 15th. And the consensus was December 7th and 8th. So the dates that are recommended, unless there would be other options or choices, is March 9th and 10th, June 1st and 2nd, September 7th and 8th, and December 7th and 8th. And we plan on continuing to do hybrid meetings. So we'll have a specific location listed, but we will also include remote access.
All right. So is there a motion to adopt that meeting schedule?
I'll motion to adopt.
All right. All right. Professor Rego beat you to it barely, but you can second. How's that?
That'll work. Always the bridesmaid.
And I'm smarter than that. I should have known. I mean, an attorney and a judge, I really should have given you the first crack. But, I apologize. I won't practice in your county anytime soon, I'm sure. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the meeting schedule. Are there any negative votes? All right, the motion passes. All right, anything else we need, Mark?
Yeah, just the final comment. We'll be looking at public hearings, meetings, whatever we frame them at, certainly in February, March, and again in May, June, and maybe beyond that, but certainly the first half of the year, those times. So what we'll do is start to look at dates and talk to the chair and vice chair about starting that process. But I think at the last meeting, we talked about the interest in maybe having commission meetings or some of these hearings in counties around the Commonwealth, and maybe engaging with the Board of Judges or with the local CJAB or others, so that we can not only be there for receiving public comment, but have just a discussion with the local courts about these recommendations or their just views more generally about things that the commission's doing or should be doing. So I think that's a great idea. And if there's any members that have suggestions about that, feel free to just send those to me. And if you have specific dates in mind, do that too. And then we'll add that in the mix and get the chair and vice chair to make the final decision. So thanks.
Okay, so you'll work with us on that, and then
we will. Yep.
So we're ready to go. We can adjourn
We are.
today. All right. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Sounds good. It's been moved and seconded. We adjourn the meeting. Any negative votes? We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in March.
Thanks. Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, you too.
You too.